Have you ever thought about how one tiny moment of hesitation, just a little bit of holding back, can completely change everything? Well, we're going to dive into this incredible story from an ancient text. It's all about leadership, a final test, and the huge consequences of not going all in when it really counts.
So here's how this whole thing unfolds. We're starting at rock bottom, in Israel's darkest hour. Then we see a little glimmer of hope before we get to this really strange and dramatic final test. After that, we'll see what happens when an opportunity is missed, or, well, only partly taken. And it all leads to a prophecy that comes true, just not in the way it could have.
All right, let's set the scene. We're in the middle of the reign of King Jehoahaz of Israel, and things are bad. This is described as the kingdom's darkest hour. And why? Because the king, as the text puts it, did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He was basically just continuing this long-running pattern of turning away from his people's core beliefs.
So what happens when a kingdom's leader does that? Well, there's a direct consequence. The story tells us the Lord's anger just burned against Israel, and because of that, they were left under the thumb of their neighbor, the kingdom of Aram. And not just for a little while, but for the king's entire reign. They were completely and utterly dominated.
You want to know how bad it got? Just wrap your head around this one number. After the Arameans were finished with them, the entire army of Israel was left with only 50 horsemen. Not 50,000, 50. It's just a devastatingly tiny force.
And when you look at the whole picture, it's even worse. On top of those 50 horsemen, they had just 10 chariots and 10,000 foot soldiers. The king of Aram had so completely crushed their military that they were described as being like the dust at threshing time. They were basically just nothing, the leftovers.
But right when it seems like all is lost, the story takes a turn. Facing this total disaster, a disaster he himself kind of caused, the king finally does something different.
Seeing his entire kingdom just crumbling around him, King Jehoahaz finally sought the Lord's favor. He prayed. And you know what? The text says the Lord actually listened because he saw just how much the people were suffering. This is a huge turning point.
So in response, the Lord provides what the text calls a deliverer. And this intervention lets the Israelites finally escape Aram's control and go back to living in their own homes. But, and this is a big but, here's the catch. Even after being rescued, the people didn't change their ways. The root of the problem was still there. So, time marches on. Jehoahaz dies, and his son, Jehoash, becomes king. And, you guessed it, he follows right in his father's footsteps, continuing the same legacy of doing evil. The cycle just keeps going, and that sets the stage for the main event.
Okay, this is where it gets really good. The new king, Jehoash, goes to visit the legendary prophet Elisha. But Elisha is an old man now, and he's on his deathbed. This is going to be their very last meeting, and it's a big one.
When King Jehoash sees the dying prophet, he just weeps over him and shouts this amazing line, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." What on earth does that mean? He's basically saying that Elisha, this frail, dying man, is the real military and spiritual power of the nation, not his own tiny, pathetic army.
Now, Elisha, even on his deathbed, doesn't waste time with comforting words. Instead, he starts giving these really weird, specific commands. Get a bow and some arrows. Take the bow in your hands. Then Elisha puts his own hands on top of the king's hands. Open the east window, the window facing their enemy, Aram, and then shoot.
As soon as that arrow flies out the window, Elisha tells him what it all means. See, this isn't just some random arrow. This is the Lord's arrow of victory. It's a symbol, a promise that the king is going to completely and totally defeat the Arameans. Full victory is on the table.
But hold on. The test isn't over yet. The promise has been made, but now it's up to the king. He has to show some faith, some commitment. And what he does next, well, it's going to decide just how big that victory will actually be.
So Elisha tells the king, take the other arrows and strike the ground. The king does it. He hits the ground 1, 2, 3 times. And then he just stops. It seems like a small thing, right? But it was a massive, fatal mistake. And right here, this is the whole point of the story. The expectation was for the king to be passionate, zealous, to strike the ground 5 or maybe 6 times to show he wanted that total victory. But the reality? Just a half-hearted 3-strike effort. And because of that, the promise of complete victory got downgraded to just 3 limited wins. You can just feel the prophet's anger.
His final words to the king are a rebuke. You should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times, but now you will defeat it only 3 times. The king's own hesitation, his lack of passion, put a ceiling on God's promise. The future was decided in that one lukewarm moment.
So now we get to the final act. Elisha dies and is buried. But his words, his power, it sticks around. And everything he said would happen starts to play out with this chilling precision.
First, we get this absolutely wild story that just reinforces Elisha's power. Some men are burying a guy when they get surprised by raiders, so they just chuck the body into Elisha's tomb to hide it. The second the dead man's body touches the prophet's bones, he comes back to life and stands up. It's this crazy reminder that Elisha's connection to divine power was the real deal. And then, the prophecy kicks in. The king of Aram dies. His son takes over, and King Jehoash of Israel goes into battle, and he recaptures the towns that have been taken from his father. That's victory number 1.
Just like Elisha said, Jehoash goes on to defeat the Arameans again. He keeps pushing back the enemy that had dominated his country for so long. And that's victory number 2. And finally, he defeats them a 3rd time, getting back all of the Israelite towns. But that's it. It stops there. 3 strikes, 3 victories. The prophecy was fulfilled to the letter. He won, yes, but he didn't win completely. That chance for total victory was gone, lost in that moment of hesitation. And that really brings us to the question this whole story leaves us with. It's so easy to look back and judge the king, right? To think, why'd you stop? But the story is also kind of a mirror. It forces us to ask ourselves in our own lives, with our own challenges, when have we been offered a shot at total victory, but settled for just a partial one because we stopped striking the ground a little too soon?